I would like us all to, I invite you to listen with the softest part of your ears and your expanding heart during this. We are at a time that we know that it is possible. We're getting faced with all the challenges and difficulties. And so I invite you to lower or close your eyes, and whatever way works for you, I invite our ancestors, past, present, and future, to be with all of us, not only those who are speaking, but those who are listening in, watching, and putting questions in the chat throughout our event, that we are of service to not only now the forests, the people, all our relations, but to generations out. And for that, we give gratitude to every part of Mother Earth and hear the prayers and offerings in service to all. Aho. And now, if you would open your eyes, I would like to introduce the two people that you will be hearing from for the next 90 minutes. And that is Hasina Kharbhih, and she's from the Khasi Matrilineal tribe of Northeast India. She is an Ashoka and Aspen Fellow. She has won many awards, and she is founder of a number of organizations that we'll be putting in the chat because we want you to follow up. And the other member is the amazing Saurav Malhotra, and he's co-founder and designer of the Rural Futures Framework of the Balipara Foundation. And I know you all are just wondering about how does gender harmony, forests, and ending human trafficking all fit together. And this panel will, through their answers to questions, through their unfolding, will let you know exactly what is possible when we don't separate things and instead we keep them all connected of what we are able to do. So with that, I'd like to start with you all saying a little bit more about yourself, but starting for us to understand place because it's so important. So Saurav, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you so much, Anita, for having us and the entire team that is actually making this possible right now. I'm just going to begin by talking about the region that we are from, because I think just trying to bring your attention to the part of the world. So if you look at the yellow dot in Southeast Asia, we are sort of sandwiched between China in the north, Bangladesh in the south, Nepal on the east, and here's Northeast India with Myanmar sort of towards the southeast. This entire region is called the Eastern Himalayan region because it is just one half of the entire Himalayan mountain range. And it's got, various kinds of topographies from alpine forests to some of the greatest rivers originate here, including the Yangtze, the Mekong, and the Brahmaputra and the Ganges. But this region, because of, primarily of this transboundary nature and between so many countries, has suffered from a lot of geopolitics over the last many, many years, has suffered from huge scales of deforestation, and the Human Development Index in the region, which is home to many indigenous communities, remains quite low as of today. Hasina, would you like to talk a bit about the human trafficking angle? Yeah.
You'll need to unmute, Hasina.
So if you're looking at the Eastern Himalayan, and if you're looking at the geographical location of where we come from, so the northeast of India is often known as the Seven Sisters and One Brother, which is unique. And we are connected by the Chicken Neck, which happens to be bordering Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh. And we also have the Eastern Himalayan belt, where we also see China on the other end. Now, being in such a geographical location, movement of people, migration has been one of the major force of why people are moving out. So one is that the movement of people have been one aspect of why the forest has actually been not available, in the sense that there's no employment opportunities. And the other end is that migration to Southeast Asia is also very much in the Eastern Himalayan, where people are looking for employment opportunity, they're looking for better pastures, they're looking for the availability of how they can have better employment. So that is one aspect of this geographical location. And we have seen over the last many years of the work that we have been doing that human trafficking from the Eastern Himalayan goes as much as to Middle East and many other parts of the world where vulnerability has been created through the choice of employment and opportunities. Over to you, Saurav.
And interestingly, we really think, and Hasina has shown from a lot of her work, that the reason why human trafficking takes place in the first place is because people have no other options for livelihoods. And the point where we got together, and we will talk a bit about that later, is the fact that because of severe rates of deforestation in this region, I'm sure all of you have heard of the great country of Bhutan. So this entire region has in fact lost forests twice the size of Bhutan in the last 20 years. And because of the extent of the deforestation in a region where people primarily depend on land and agriculture for all forms of livelihood, access to livelihoods have reduced, and even people involved in agriculture are suffering from lower yields every year. So your incomes reduce, and therefore you have to resort to deforestation to augment incomes. So it's kind of like that we are stuck in a vicious cycle where poverty is leading to deforestation, and where deforestation, because of the lack of agricultural yields is leading to further poverty. Hasina, over to you.
The Eastern Himalayan people has a huge diversity of indigenous people. It is one of the hotspot of indigenous population that has diversity, that also have uniqueness of the tribes that they come from. And this uniqueness in the course of years has in fact been one of the changes that we have seen, because many of them has become minority. Now, why have they become minority? They become minority mainly because of the forest, is what Saurav has mentioned. Now, when indigenous people who lives in the forest does not have the forest for the local economy, for the protection of where they are coming from, and for the entire employment opportunity, for the food security, they start migrating. And migration has led to more and more smaller tribes. And we are seeing minorities of major tribes of the Eastern Himalayan. And that is also one of the reasons that when they moved out, when they come back, they don't have the land with them anymore. And when they come back, there's no opportunity for them anymore, either because politically the land has been taken away. Deforestation has actually allowed all form of economics, which is actually destructive to the environment. And in that part, they have no more employment, when actually the richness of the Eastern Himalayan, the indigenous population, have been a window that people are start talking now, where are they? Where are they going? So that is one aspect. Now, if you're going to the northeast of India, we have more than 4,000 tribes. And most of these tribes are not even listed in the UN list of indigenous population. Only a very small amount of 40 to 60 of them are listed. But we have major tribes, sub-tribes, and these are the tribes that we both are working with. These are the communities that we are actually working in getting them their rights, in getting them to get back to the forest. And that is why this entire area is an area that the world has hardly known, or the world has hardly spoken about it. So when we're talking about indigenous population of the world, the Eastern Himalayan population is not often spoken to the world. So we are glad, Anita, that this opportunity, today that we're having of telling the stories to the world, that we have an indigenous population that live in the Himalayas. Everybody talk about Mount Everest, but that is, where today we are seeing that climate change is making this one of the biggest challenge of the world. And the people who are living in the Eastern Himalayan are part of that. So we know of certain things. We know Kaziranga, the national park of the world. And there are population who are indigenous who live within those forests, but people don't know who are they and what's happening to them. So migration has actually bring more of, a smaller population. And this is where we are working and trying to restore back.
This is where I think is so powerful, Hasina and Saurav, what you are talking about, because here are people who do know, who are connected to the land, but when the forests are devastated in that, it hurts them, but it hurts everyone. And then you see the migration that's happening that then turns into human trafficking. And so you two came together. Indigenous, you're from the Khasi tribe, and non-indigenous, and when I say that, I mean from the traditional sense of talking about a tribe, because we all know we're all indigenous, we're all of Mother Earth. However, we see a man and a woman, female and masculine, what we're talking about, and yet you came together, and that's exactly what is needed. It's not these false separations. So as we continue with the story, we want to hear, how did you meet each other so that we can ground it in that here's a biologist, a scientist, and then here's you who's had decades of a commitment, a passion for human dignity, to end human trafficking. Can you tell us a little bit about that so that we understand why this gender harmony also, and then we'll jump even back in and hear more about the specifics, as I know everyone wants to know as much as we can. So please tell us, how did this come together? Because we need it to happen all over the world.
Saurav, I think, would you like to start? How did you
Yeah.
come
In
connect?
fact, I think I will start with a very quick info background on me, Anita, because I mean, the kind of work that I'm doing right now is not something that I was doing 5 years ago. So what I'm doing now has also been sort of like an accidental journey for me. I'm very glad that it happened, but it has been accidental. So I was a biologist and a scientist by training, working in a lab. But I got more interested in forests and conservation, and decided to come back to the northeast of India, where I grew up and I was born, to do an internship in conservation, to then figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and maybe actually going back and studying further. As this internship was meant to be for 3 months, it went on for 6 months, and it went on for 9 months, till I ended up sort of creating Rural Futures as a part of the internship. And what this internship was all about was to try and understand the intersections between the Asian elephant, which is a mascot species of the region, forests and humans, and how are they living together, and why is there conflict. So Rural Futures as an idea was born out of this problem, to try and recreate the symbiosis between humans and wildlife and forests, right, which have always existed and still exist, in fact. So I think I was naturally interdisciplinary, because I had jumped from working in a lab to being in the forests. And then, I mean, I always knew who Hasina was. And I think I just met her very briefly, but we were both very busy at a conference. So we actually did not talk to each other. But a colleague of mine knows Hasina much better than I do. And I happen to be in the city where Hasina lives, Shillong, which is about 100 kilometers away from here, also in the hills. And then I just talked to my colleague saying that, hey, would you mind setting up an appointment with Hasina for me, because I'm there in Shillong, and I think I'll have a few spare hours. So I want to just meet her and have a chat. I didn't really have an agenda, right? I didn't have an agenda. I just I had some time, and I'm like, why not have a chat with Hasina and figure out what this whole human trafficking scene is about? Because honestly, I think till that day, I hadn't thought about human trafficking, right? And I had no idea how great the problem of human trafficking was in that area. Because in the 5 years of me doing what I do, I had already gotten myself into a silo of only thinking about the forests, So I think me talking to Hasina, getting a meeting, and she saying, yes, come over. I think we had a meeting for about 2 hours. We were supposed to meet for half an hour, and we chatted for 2 hours over a cup of tea at Hasina's office. And I think there has been no looking back. And this was just before the first wave of COVID, actually. Yeah. And then we continued speaking online, and we met and we explored the work that each other do, and the co-creation sort of just happened. It just happened. We don't have a date for when the co-creation happened. I mean, I'm sure we can figure it out, but I think it happened in a span of a few months. Yeah. Hasina, would you like to add?
Yeah, so I think if I go back from the date, Anita, I put the date of the meeting as a starting date because that was a conversation we both had and we were quite open. And that was 12 February 2020. And I think that conversation was me sharing about human trafficking issues, the work that we were doing, and bringing in this lens that we have been working to a hybrid model, which is impulse social enterprises, and how we are creating economic value chain for the indigenous population in the region of the northeast of India and also in the Eastern Himalayan. And since the impulse model, which dive deep on the 12 pillars, I was talking to him about preventing could be something that needs to be done and it cannot be done alone. So that was the conversation. I remember that very clearly and sharing that it cannot be done alone and it has to be integrated, and talking about the people that we work who live within the forest and how they have lost the forest and they have no more land and they don't have any more resources, and that's why they migrate. So the reason of their migration, the reason of not available of resources was how we were both talking. But trust me, that was a day we both had the strength of who we are and what we do. And I think we did not have ego on that conversation. It's like I sharing my heart out. This is what I do. I love what I do. He's sharing his heart out by saying, I came back and this is what I'm doing. So that conversation. And then COVID strike, Anita. And I mean, I would say organically, we could have halt, but we took the conversation. We took it online and we started speaking more often through a lot of webinars and email and WhatsApp. And then we just decided, I don't think we even decided. If I really put it, we didn't even decide. It just happened. It just happened because we see that. I know if Saurav want to add that, why did it happen? And how did it happen?
I think the one amazing technical thing here for me, Anita, was that I mean, I had never thought that the impacts of restoring a forest could be as widespread, right? I always thought that if you bring the forest back, it'll be good for wildlife, it'll be good for soil, it'll be good for agriculture, it'll be good for carbon global warming and the local economy, right? But in the 5 years of my deep dive into the environment, I had never once even thought about the people who are migrating from these areas, right? And these people were migrating from these areas because they had lost forests already, and because their agricultural lands were not healthy enough to yield good produce. So their livelihoods that were dependent on agriculture were reducing because the groundwater was drying and because the forests had just gone away, right? So I think one very, very exciting thing for me was a realization that the work that I was doing does not only have these 10 impacts, right? But it also has these other 10 impacts. And there's probably another 100 impacts that we have no idea about, right? But I think also I think an important point here is that I would say that most people in the I mean, not just in the development sector, but I think interdisciplinarity in the world, Anita, I think has not evolved as much as it should, right? I mean, how often at a university do you see a biologist talk to a sociologist, right? That doesn't happen, right? So, and I think for me, the first question was a why not, because I am in Shillong, so why not meet Hasina, right? And I'm glad I did. And I think a lot of, I mean, you also mentioned gender equity, right? That also just happened, and now the world knows that it wasn't planned, that it was completely accidental. It was me and Hasina. But we do know that things are better that way. We do know that the kind of work that we will be doing and we are doing will be more impactful just because of this. But we see that as a great process, as a great process which can drive better long-term outcomes for our communities.
I think you just both described what I had been hearing from people, like gender harmony. Now, how does that fit? Okay, I know I'm going to hear this, but what it is that when you both, as Hasina, you said, had your hearts open, even with the appearance of having separate journeys, we become to understand what Indigenous people have known for some time, and that means all of us, right? Is that we're all one hoop of life. We're all one word. And so you tap anything and you do be in healthy relationship with it, it's impacting all of it. And I love that you said, Saurav. There probably are hundreds more connections, and that hopefully those of you who are listening to them are going to get even more into what they're doing and the models and things and some cases, is to understand that with that expanded heart, when you enter into whatever it is you're doing, then it leaves room. And so to say, well, no, this human trafficking is mostly women, so we're just going to deal with women and do with that part of it. Or no, we're in sciences, and in sciences is more and more women are in it, but it's still largely male, and we're changing all of that. And to do that means we have to have our hearts open. So thank you for sharing, because we want to know that this is all possible for all of you who are watching. Whatever it is you're doing, that again, keep seeing not separation, but keep seeing how this could be connected. And rather than being overwhelmed, what you'll find is it deepen both of your work. And that's what we want to hear more about, is how the gendered equity leadership, it's been clearly beneficial, and how that has led to the overarching goal, which is to prevent human trafficking by regenerating forests. And we know economics and everything comes in. So I just want to give it back to you to help still unfold this story.
Sure. So I think I'm going to tell you a bit, but then I'm going to hand over to Hasina for the parts that I know she always does better. Yeah. So actually, I mean, so we've been thinking about this as we work and as we journey and as we travel, right? There's a lot of research in the world which sort of, I think, tells you about women leadership in the social sector versus the leadership of men in the social sector. A lot of this research says that men are usually more eager or more efficient in scaling out, right? Like they want to do more, they want to impact more people, more communities, more countries, just more people as fast as they can. Women leaders tend to do what they're doing, where they're doing much better first before the scale, right? And there is enough evidence to actually prove that statistically. So women leaders prefer to scale deep first and scale up in that one state or in that one country, and then begin the process of scaling out and therefore increasing your numbers, right? So the numbers are probably not as important based on data for women leaders, whereas numbers drive male leaders. We look at that, and we have sort of some anecdotes through our travels to also share with the audience whenever that's appropriate. But we look at that in a way that our goal is to be able to restore forests to prevent human trafficking. And we want to do this not only in the northeast of India, but we also want to do this in all the countries that border us. But we also know that deforestation and human trafficking are large problems in Latin America, in Central America, in Southeast Asia, and in Africa, right? So this region is just not our oyster, right? But what I am understanding is that I do sometimes want everything to be done yesterday, or that, I have to do this today. I have to go there and get this done today, or I have to get this done tomorrow. Hasina brings in sort of like a reality check, saying that we're going to do this, sort of, don't worry. But before we do that, let us do this first, right? So I think because the two of us are doing this together, whatever I'm doing is therefore going to be deeper. And I think whatever Hasina is trying to do through the impulse model and then also the co-creation, it might be faster and scale out faster, right? I think we will have to wait for a few years to be able to give you guys all the figures and the data. And I would love to come back and talk to you about it. But I think that we will be able to achieve the large goal that we have set out for ourselves better, faster, more effectively, and deeper, right? And not just that, but I think also begin to revitalize the sense of gender harmony with the indigenous communities where we work. Hasina is going to talk a bit more about that because I mean, this entire problem, if I may call it that, of the lack of gender harmony or the lack of gender equity rising in the world, is it just a matter of social conditioning? And we think that with all of the indigenous communities that we work, it is simply only a matter of social conditioning. It's a matter of television, it's a matter of globalization, and it's a matter of modernization, right? I think, Hasina, you should talk a bit more about the communities and your inspirations on that.
Before you start on that, Hasina, I just want to say, Saurav, as you spoke, I'm hoping the audience heard as well. When you described, it wasn't either or that you need the masculine or feminine, you need both. But what I heard is that perhaps part of what Sina, and she's about to speak about this, it's like tilling the soil. It's like conditioning the soil, making sure you have that in place so that then what you plant to grow up, to scale out, is really going to take root instead of just fizzle out. And so it's like bringing together all of our strengths is so necessary. And so to you, Hasina, to share more about that story.
Thanks, Anita. So I think the journey of 30 years through the impulse model, the model itself scaled very, very deep before we scale out to our neighboring countries in Myanmar, Nepal, and Bangladesh. And every time we had scale out, we were also scaling deep. And the focus has always been that the importance that we need to bring gender equity, and we've tried really hard. And the best example, I think, of our journey is that the possibility of an organic leadership, in bringing gender harmony was something that we could show it to the world, because there was never a debate that, I'm good at this or I'm good at that. We just realized that scaling deep was an important element as well as scaling out. But every time when Saurav said, oh, we have to get it done now, and I said, well, we have to do this cross-check, because how strong are we internally before we give that for replication? So I think that is something that we never, basically disagree. And I don't think we disagree, because we realize what he just mentioned is that we managed to just take that in a better way.
You haven't fought yet.
I would also feel that I come from a matrilineal society. And the most important part is that the lineage is through the mother. I grew up like that. And everything around me as a child, as I grew up, is that everything is equal, So you don't seek equality, it's just equal. So there's nothing that you are a man or a woman or any other gender. It's just completely the process of it. So when me and Saurav was taking this co-creation together, I think that was where I come from. But I mean, to be honest, because Saurav come from a patriarchal society, right? I thought in the beginning, will we ever be able to go organically? But today I saw the possibility that here we are doing it. So, so it's just not about indigenous population, right? The whole global world can actually can have gender harmony in leadership, and innovations can co-create. And that's how it is. It's not working in silos, So we work with the communities, we work with the artisans in the northeast of India, and we realize that they live within the forest. They're still weaving from home. And realizing that here the whole world is talking about sustainability, it's talking about food security, it's talking about climate change. But the end-to-end value chain can only happen through co-creation. And that's what impulse model prevention and rural futures, I think, it's like it marry very well. The whole process just goes along very, very well. And the process of how the people who are part of this, whether it's our partners, whether it's the communities that we work with, sees that. And it's like for them, the community is revisiting who they are as indigenous people.
Okay, good. I think if we could shift a little, so this is opening up to possibilities, and I know people will ask questions later. Let's look at taking this, which is a really good foundation of really acceptance, embracing all of you, the similarities and the differences, and bringing that together. But look at some of the specifics. So some people may have just come on and wondering, okay, so can you give a little more definition to each of these arenas, which is deforestation, some more about that, a little bit more about human trafficking, what does that even mean? And then what is this futures, this connection that get more in depth into the model, which you began to do at some point, Hasina. So let's get into a little bit more about some specifics of what we're the technical of what we're actually talking about, and then go fuller into the model with some cases and some videos.
Sure.
I don't know who wants to.
Yeah, I think I'll just give a quick intro on deforestation, and then we also have a short movie to show which sort of links the two larger aspects. So, I think looking at forests across the world, our forests have been under immense pressure, primarily from increasing needs of agriculture, because we as humans have gone away from indigenous ways of cultivating the food that we eat, but moving towards the commercialization of food and monocultures, and we want everything packaged in a bag and easily available. So agriculture globally has been the largest driver of deforestation, and that continues to happen in South Asia, in Southeast Asia, and in Latin America. Secondly, I think we as one united family of the earth, we are probably only just now beginning to gather consensus on the fact that we need to save our forests, right? I'm not saying that it's a bit too late, but over the last 100 years of humanity on earth, we have lost more forests than we have in thousands of years prior. And the reason why that has happened is A, because of greed, B, capitalism driving greed, and C, the fact that capitalism has been abusing the economies where forests lie. And unfortunately, or fortunately, most of the forests of the world, in fact, lie with the indigenous people, sort of in between the tropics, right? I mean, some of the greatest biodiversity spots in the world are still guarded by indigenous people. And the reason why they are still there is because many indigenous people have fought for it, have fought tirelessly for it, and have, in fact, even lost lives fighting for the forests. I think there's some fantastic examples of great indigenous activism from Colombia, from Brazil, and as well as from this region. What continues to happen, though, is the fact that we have not been able to move from an economy which needs to extract, right? We're still using coal, we still buy gold, we still buy diamond, and all of this comes from mines. All of this is actually coming from mines in Africa, in South Asia, or in Latin America. In fact, one of the prime drivers for deforestation in the Brazilian Amazonas is gold mining as of today. And the fact that I mean, the majority of the population of the world will never think twice about gold, right? I mean, I'm just buying gold. But what is the effect of you buying that gold, of you supporting that gold economy, is leading to the destruction of a forest so people can get into the mines, right? And there are many similar challenges that we face in the Eastern Himalayan region with coal, right? Because India as a country is still using coal in quite a major way to drive energy. India is one of the largest exporters of gold in the world, and this gold comes from many of the areas where the forests lie. All of these areas happen to be areas of great biodiversity. I mean, of the elephants, of the Royal Bengal tiger, of the one-horned rhinoceros. All of these iconic species live in the forest here. But because of large-scale deforestation, because of all of the factors that I've mentioned, and because the policy environment of the world has not been conducive towards people trying to grow forests, right? Because the entire policy environment of the world is shaped by capitalism, unfortunately, and the need to extract without restoring, or without the need to restore land. And therefore, we are losing forests at an unprecedented pace, although in the last 3 years, the entire deforestation rates have gone down by about 2% in the world. But we still have a long way to go. Many of the forests in the world have not reached the tipping point of us not being able to bring them back, right? Most of these forests are guarded by indigenous communities. So the only way forward for us to be able to save the forests of the world is, in fact, to empower indigenous communities to be charged to be stewards of their lands, right? To be stewards of their lands. I think just creating a situation of the commons, right? How indigenous communities have always lived. If we manage to get the commons back to the people of the land, our forests are going to come back. But the effects of deforestation, Anita, affect industry, affect businesses, affect water systems, affect air pollution, and also affect, therefore, livelihoods and trafficking, right? So the goal here, the goal for Rural Futures was to try and figure out a way. So how do you package all of these problems and find a solution? So poverty is a problem. Deforestation is a problem. Human-wildlife conflict is a problem. So how can you create a system by which you can empower people or economically incentivize communities to plant trees, right? How can you incentivize communities that don't know where the next meal is going to come from to leave what they're doing now and plant trees, right? So that was the first question which Rural Futures tried to solve. Then we got communities behind the process of rewilding, and we realized that indigenous communities already had all the knowledge of the forest. They knew what the seeds were, they knew what all the trees were, and they knew how to grow them back, and they knew how to grow them in nurseries. And the youth from these communities, some of whom are here, were actually the people driving this entire process. The youth took stewardship of the entire process of restoring land and became leaders in their own right? And the reason why whatever has happened on the ground through the programs has succeeded is only because of the leadership of the youth, not because of me or anybody else. And that, I think, is the only future possible where you empower and equip people across the world to be able to restore land, and to be able to drive sustainable economics. I don't think that we can live off nostalgia anymore.
Right.
We have to think of the economics. So you have to be able to figure out a way to rebuild economics. What we then saw is when people were bringing forests back, people could harvest from the forest. People were reviving indigenous agroforests. So from just one plot of land, you had 4 times the amount of cash as you previously had. So bringing the forest back and bringing your indigenous heritage back was not only good for nature, but it was also good for economics of the region. And therefore, nature or the forests were giving people economic power to meet aspirations, are giving people economic power to be able to go and get a good education, which costs quite a lot in a country like India, or giving people the economic power to be able to go out and get access to clean drinking water. All of these are basic assets, but all of these are basic assets that most of the communities in the region don't have. In fact, about 40% of the indigenous communities of the region live under serious grades of multivariate poverty, and therefore do not have access to all of these agencies, right? And because of this lack of assets, because of the lack of economic opportunities, people migrate. And Hasina can add a lot more about that process.
Before you go into that, I just want to pinpoint some of the things you said. First of all, thank you for being here. Some of the youth who have been part of in this region, really having the vision, the consciousness. Consciousness is rising all over, but I want us to know that it's not bounded by age. that understanding that we're one hoop and what we do connects to everything, to the air we breathe, to the water, or lack thereof. And so having that vision, the understanding of our oneness is part of what's rising this up. And so I just want to make note and thank them as you have, because we know that everything you're talking about is about connectedness of many two-leggeds, many human beings being part of this. And so with that, Hasina, could you share some more about the...
I think when we go back to why people migrate, I think Saurav has mentioned the aspect of why people move. Now, we have been working with migration for almost 30 years. And we realize that they migrate because they don't have the resources back from the source point where they come from. They've lost the land, they've lost the whole economy, and they were looking for a job, which is much more labor. I think he mentioned about coal minings. Now, we as an organization has been working with trafficking for labor in the rat hole mining in Meghalaya. Now, Meghalaya is very, very rich in terms of biodiversity as one of the states that I come from. But the mining has actually destructed the whole environment, and it also brings cheap labor, which are children from our neighboring countries like Bangladesh and Nepal. While we are working towards supporting, the children who are affected by being trafficked to the coal mine, and having campaign over that, and having the fact that there were more than 70,000 children in those mines at one point of time, we decided to file a public interest litigation, which is a legal law that allowed the closure of mine. And that was one of an eye-opener that the world today is facing similarities, whether it's Latin America, whether it's Southeast Asia, anywhere where the economics of mines is still prevalent. So People migrate either for labor, and because cheap labor is a necessity in the whole capital world. And here we are looking at children being exploited. And then we realize that it is because the destruction of the environment is making children labor. The other aspect is the women that we work with. The indigenous women are very rich in terms of ancestral skill that was passed from their grandmother, from their mothers, to weave their own fabric, their own textile. Now, when they used to weave their own textile, the yarn itself come from the forest, eri, which is the yarn, and the different kind of cotton that used to be part of the forest is no longer there. So now our co-creation brings forward what used to be there in the past, how the youth can actually take this forward, how the women can actually have choices not to migrate, and how women actually can take economic, which is just right at their own home. And these choices actually is a long term of preventing human trafficking. So the value of the co-creation is if two innovation comes together that actually give a comprehensive value chain, and if two leaders bring in the opportunities that gender equity, because it's so important to really bring in that it's all gender that comes together, right? It cannot just be one group of people. I think the fact that it's there, but people don't realize it, the youth leave because they feel there's no more value in where they come from. So the importance of actually tackling climate change in the world, or tackling migration, which is actually supporting slavery in this world today, that continue to support in the 21st century, because it's a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry that people still get trafficked, still get exploited. So
Yes.
why can't we actually build the forest back, give an end-to-end value chain in the weave, from the yarn to the end product, where women have the economy, the youth participate. So it's the richness of both. And that is where this whole co-creation coexists in harmony.
Yes, I just love that because it's, we could just deal with the problem. We have to be aware of what the problems are. But what you're saying is this isn't just about rescuing, 74,000 girls and boys. This isn't just about rehabbing a part of the forest. These are all intimately connected. If we can go back to the care that we are all should be stewards of, the care of ourselves, the care of each other, and all our relatives, including the earth, then what happens is all those other things become diminished. The possibility for this to happen. That's what I'm hearing from you very clearly, Hasina, and from you, Saurav. So let's, I'm not sure, I don't want to cut out any videos or things you want to say, but what else in the models you want to share? And then maybe we can get to a few case studies before we have the last part where we'll be using, showing a really deep video for everyone to be able to take that information away with them. So anything else on the models before we go into case studies?
So I think that the impulse model prevention and rural futures co-creation, we focus gender equity because we want all the participation, which is existing. We are reviving that existence. We are making them realize that you can do it.
Am I in the right
The other is that we have to prevent unsafe migration, and to prevent unsafe migration, you have to give choices to women not to migrate unsafely. So the importance of the economic that is available, it's an important part that indigenous population in the Eastern Himalayan, where trafficking has been one of the major problems, that people are migrating not only to Southeast Asia, but to the whole Middle East. Even if you look at during COVID-19, we have massive population of people from Nepal coming back home from the Middle East, coming back home from different parts of the world in Southeast Asia. So today when they come back, if they don't have the forest, if they don't have the income back home, then definitely the vulnerability increases. And the realization that this co-creation is more valuable. And I think the Impulse Model 12 pillars has, in the last 30 years, has taught those lessons through the cases of human trafficking that we have dealt, through numbers of cases. And they all are connected back to migration because of lack of opportunities. So unless until we go back and provide opportunities, then we will never be able to end slavery. I'm not saying that human trafficking can be stopped overnight, but if choices is being given, people don't have to leave. And that's the importance of the model.
So that site will be sure and put in the chat so that people can know how to find that. But you mentioned 12 pillars. Could you at least highlight what those are so we hear those, and then we can point people to the chat where they can get more as well information?
So the 12 pillars stands on the 6 P's and the 6 R's. And it brings, the 6 P's brings both the private and the public partnership together and to a common vision. It brings collective leadership, engages that we work towards a common vision. The 6 R are actually the action on the ground that collectively provides leaders to address the issue of human trafficking. So the 6 P's is partnership, prevention, protection, policing, press, and prosecution. And the 6 R is report, rescue, rehabilitation, repatriation, reintegration, and restitution. So this is a very comprehensive element, but a comprehensive element cannot work in isolation. The comprehensive element works through collective leadership. And the comprehensive element cannot actually tackle a multi-billion-dollar industry. It can only, actually tackle that through a co-creation, because it brings the whole value chain. It brings a participation of people who are rich with their own local economy.
Great. Thank you so much. I always hear with both of you going full circle, full circle, full circle. So we do have, Saurav, thank you for putting in the chat, the Impulse NGO Network.org, and then Impulse Model Prevention, Rural Futures Co-Creation. It's a long one, but it's also, you can copy that, you can take a picture of it, and it's so important for people to delve into that. And we hear you so clearly. It is about not just having model, that is enough. You have to have the people, you have to have the harmony, you have to have the collective leadership. It's all one. So thank you. Saurav, did you want to add anything to this and maybe go into some cases?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to show a short video clip that sort of captures how natural calamities in the region that are increasing by the year lead to migration and therefore trafficking. And then we can do a bit of a deep dive before we come off to the next. Yeah.
Okay.
Floods in Assam affect lakhs of people every year. It is not just cropland or homes that are damaged, but the annual flood washes away several hectares of land, causing devastation to life. And yet, we are far from taking concrete measures to eradicate the problem. I, Hasina Kharbhih, chairperson of Impulse NGO Network, have dedicated my life to battle human trafficking, and in the pursuit connected another dot that can be a major cause behind human trafficking. I recently traveled to one of the villages near Kaziranga National Park in Assam. Although floods come as a blessing in disguise for the national park and its animal, but the people residing in the nearby area have to pay a huge price every year. Affected by floods every year, and we see the kind of natural calamities affecting migration. And migration is one way of increasing the numbers of human trafficking. But over and above, we are feeling that response to human trafficking is just not about rescue, but it's also about how the environment is protected and how the environment can actually provide income generating activities, or ensuring that the response cannot be short term, but rather more of a long-term process. I have with me here Saurav Malhotra. He's actually working with teachers, and nice to meet you here. It's really interesting the kind of work that you are doing. And I think rural teachers are responding to agroforestry environment, in ensuring that livelihood is, being provided on the long term. But it has so much to do with how flood, is the after effect when there is deforestation. I would really love you to share, like, how does you all respond, and what is the long-term goal that you think Assam should do?
Sure. So, Hasina, like you rightly mentioned, flood is an annual event in Assam, and natural calamities like floods have a high potential in displacing people. And like a lot of your work has shown, that natural calamities lead to migration, which results in unsafe trafficking. The point here is that floods are the results of deforestation and of the harm that we do to our natural environment. We can take Kaziranga as an example, which gets flooded every year, but the intensity of this flooding in the past decade has grown exponentially because of deforestation upstream in the Kaziranga National Park. Another reason, like your work has shown again, is that migration is also caused due to economic instabilities. We also believe that the root cause there is the environment, and that a healthy environment ensures that you have healthy economics for your life to function, for your community to function, and then that prevents the ills of people having to migrate. So what we have proposed and we're piloting on the ground since the last 4 years is a rural futures model of the Balipara Foundation. And through this model, we believe that we are building economic mobility by engaging communities, indigenous communities and youth in the process of rewilding and restoring habitats, which are part of the protected area landscapes. In addition to this, we are engaging youth in developing agroforestry models in their homesteads in community land to compound and increase the income that you get from a certain portion of land. A lot of our work has shown that the income per hectare per unit of land can be increased by up to 5 times if you switch from single double cropping to like agroforestry. So we believe that by engaging people in the restoration of the landscape, it could be farmland, it could be wildlife habitats, it could be any of those things. And by creating a system by which indigenous communities sustainably harvest and use for their own needs, that this really increases baseline incomes for many of our indigenous communities. And sadly, our indigenous communities face all of the major climate change challenges, and they are the ones who are least equipped to fight these challenges.
So I think that, Anita, was a quick sort of summary of a climate change linked challenge that the northeastern part of India saves every year, that has been affecting the country of Bangladesh for the last many years, and this problem only seems to get worse in the region. So the amount of land that gets covered with floods every year has increased by about 20% in the last 15 years in the region. And floods are a direct consequence of losing your forests, because you don't have forests anymore, and therefore your soil is not being held on to by the trees, and soil gets into the water and the river overflows. So that's just that is exactly how simple it is, right? But because of floods, people are having to migrate because people have been living on lands which were previously never flooded, but now get flooded annually. And if your house is underwater for 4 months of the year, what other option do you have? Your house is underwater, your agricultural fields are underwater. So the only other option for you is to try and migrate to find a better life elsewhere, right? And then when you migrate in situations which are so desperate, Hasina's work has shown that it is then or this sort of situation of desperate migration that makes you most vulnerable to human trafficking, So I think this really shows the multiple effects, positive benefits of ecology that we can have, but also all of the negatives that come to life on Earth if we do not protect the very origin of our life on Earth in a way.
I think that video was really wonderful. Thank you, Saurav. It just is such a call to action, because we need to be aware of what's happening in the northeast part of India and all the adjoining countries. And you're showing us this is also a reminder for us. This is happening everywhere. This isn't just saying, oh, it's over there. It's happening everywhere. And so this call to action, to let your heart lead you, and then to take on the bigger issues and anchor it locally. And that's what I hear you doing. And I love your dream and vision, both Hasina and yours, that the models you created, the results you had, and as it still keeps unfolding, great humility, it's still unfolding, that you're able to share that with leadership all over the world. And that leadership may not always be just formal leadership. The leaders I hear you talking about we're all natural leaders. It's about awakening that. And that's so exciting. So that was a very painful on one hand to see that video, but at the same time, I'm really grateful because again, it opens our hearts to really understand that we all matter at this time. Each of us has choice to make and can be of great benefit to all life. So Hasina, I didn't know if you had anything to add or if we wanted to move to, I'm just conscious of time, if there's some more cases that you want to speak of, and then we're planning on about a deep dive with a 20-minute video to close with.
So I think we can just go next to the case studies. Saurav, I think that's what we have, and then we can dive deep with that. Yeah.
So this slide is dedicated to Pavitra, who is here. I think he's been going on and off here because of some internet glitches, but I'm sure he's watching on Facebook. Yeah. So in fact, Pavitra was nominated by the elders of his village to work together with us. Yeah. In the first place. He was about 5 years younger than he is today, but so was I, and so were we all.
It's a good problem.
Yeah, it's a good problem. But Pavitra essentially mobilized his peers, not just other boys in the village, but also other girls and women in the village, and became the keystone driver for all kinds of restoration work that we've done in the area. You see here on the left, Pavitra is working together with a forest ranger. So the guy with Pavitra has been a forest ranger for many, many years. And the forest ranger and Pavitra together are creating a nursery of seedlings, of seeds that they have collected from the forests month after month based on the seasons. And these seeds are then regrown in these nurseries managed by Pavitra and his friends, and then planted back into the forest or planted back into the agroforest, right? And the kind of sort of management that youth leadership has created in the village is also, I think, not just being able to enhance local economy, not just being able to enhance households, to upgrade their farms to agro farms, but also in being able to document what their own indigenous knowledge is. Because many of Pavitra's peers have forgotten what their indigenous knowledge is and means, right? Pavitra, and together with a few team of scientists and people, have actually led the revolution to try and capture this knowledge that is currently only found with people who are above the age of 90, unfortunately, right? So by the process of getting youth on board to document your own knowledge, it is not me documenting your knowledge, it is you documenting your ancestral knowledge, then you get this knowledge back in a living form already. It's no longer just in a book, it's no longer just in a movie, but this knowledge is living. So the knowledge of the plants and the forest and the medicines from the forest has been revived, and it is living on the ground. It's not in a book, but this entire revolution of capturing knowledge that would have otherwise been lost with this generation has happened and is being implemented on the ground. But also, I think a really fantastic thing to have come out of this is that entrepreneurship has grown in ways that were previously unimaginable to me. So Pavitra and his friends, they run a ecotourism homestay now in their village. In fact, Pavitra runs it in his own house, and he manages another ecotourism homestay in a house about five lanes down. So in fact, all of you can come as soon as India opens its gates up and stay at Pavitra's homestay. Yeah, and he will not only give you great indigenous food, but also take you around and show you all the work that they have been leading. And Anita, I think just as a closing on this, I see this amount of success as the only way going forward to being able to achieve scale, to being able to achieve the kind of scale, right? There cannot be 100 Sauravs or 100 Hasinas, right? There cannot be 100 Pavitras either. Yeah, but there are many other sort of Hasinas and Pavitras all around the world. They just have to be activated. They just have to be activated. They just have to be found. So Pavitro, in fact, now has an official registered organization, which is a not-for-profit, and is an official network partner of the Rural Futures Initiative, right? So he leads this organization now, and it's called the Baligaon Green Youth Association of the village. So I think that is that. I
Great. We're
think
wishing Peter great success for him and all the community. And that is a model. Hope people, your call to action, we don't take faintly, that when things open up, this is a place to go. I can feel not only a learning of ancestral knowledge and everything, but a spiritual awakening in yourself of who you are. So it's quite wonderful. Go ahead, Saurav. Did you have another case study? Yes.
yes.
So I think here, let me take over. That is Rekha Dole, and she also belonged to the same tribe as Pravitra. I mean, it's from the Mishing tribe. These are the tribes that actually live basically in the water belt because their houses, their architectural houses, is called the Changhar, and these Changhar actually are still houses that allows to be able to live in the flood-prone area, as we have seen in the earlier video, how floods actually is one of the major problems that this region face over the years. Now, in the other part of she's weaving there. She's a master artisan, and she has been an instrument leader in the communities. And the skill that her mother has passed on to her, which she would normally weave clothes for herself, like every indigenous women in the region, they weave clothes for the festival, they weave clothes for themselves. But over the years, people have stopped weaving their own clothes because they find clothes coming from across the border are much cheaper, which is actually not good for the environment. Now, to prevent unsafe migration, we capitalize on her leadership. We go back to her village where she motivates every other woman to continue to weave from home. So she's an entrepreneur. Now, so as part of the Impulse Social Enterprises, we realized that the whole value chain, the prevention of human trafficking can happen if every woman in these indigenous villages start weaving, and we provide a resilient market, a centralized raw material distribution, and the co-creation today actually provide an end-to-end value chain. And that's where the purpose of the co-creation, like Rural Futures and Impulse Social Enterprises, we are actually traveling to each other's zone, so you bring your knowledge to the area that I've been working, like women like Rekha, who's a master artisans, and she goes to Pavitra village to get other women to be in this process. So this is what we talk about co-creation, the value of our learning, the value of our skill, the value that it can scale, and scaling out from village to village, scaling out from the state, where we also have collective leaders, organization, who take this forward, and scaling out to Eastern Himalayan, like country like Nepal, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, country that we have worked to prevent unsafe migration for many years. Now, the other side of the picture on my right is Rekha Dole and her husband, Ranjit Dole. Why this picture is appropriate to tell the world is that when she took off this journey to be a master artisan, an entrepreneur in her own right, weaving 2 hours a day, and also being engaged in the whole, what we call it, the agriculture that is within their own village, in their own setup of their houses, Ranjit used to help her to actually take the yarn to every other artisan's home. So that is called gender equity. He didn't see her work as something that she should do it on herself or is supplementary to the income of the house. He sees that as collective. And he would be helping to actually take yarn, which is centralized on the Impulse Social Enterprises. And today, both of them has expanded. And the beauty of this expansion is that Ranjit Dole has come in not only to facilitate action on the ground, but is actually the forefront for the agroforestry in this village. So where the Rural Futures engagement. So both of them actually becomes the leaders in their communities. They become the champion in their communities, and the equity that both men and women can do things together. And that is not something that we went to tell them, you have to do it together. It organically happened. So if that can happen it can happen and multiply in many forces. So when it happened with us, it happened with them. You know, the transformation of giving it to other, and it gets multiplied. So this is the reality of how indigenous population live. So much to learn and so much to give back to the world. So we should not forget that. You know, you should not forget that. And I think the co-creation brings that value, brings the interdependence, you know, that you cannot do it just as a man or as a woman, you can do it together. So that is Rekha Dole and Ranjit Dole. And they became today.
Yeah, just wishing them lots of love and success.
Now, you know, they're watching live.
Are they watching? Well, yes, to you all, love, success to you, your community, and reaching out and scaling out where you have already touching the lives of many people around the world. I'm so just so honored everything that you've presented. I'm aware of time, so I want to, before you share with us what we're about to watch, I want to say just gratitude to you, Hasina, and to you, Saurav, for it's you. It's not waiting to some end time. Now we're ready to talk to the world. But from the very beginning, even with COVID and that, just continuing to move forward to see that this co-creation, collective leadership, that the results that can happen when we work that way, we open our hearts to do that. So thank you. We're eager to hear as it continues to unroll and to actually also hear from other people who are now learning from your model and replicating all over the world, which I know is part of your dream. So I would just want to give real thanks to Rural Futures and the Balipara Foundation for all the things they're supporting, the youth and all the different projects, and to Impulse NGO Network and Impulse Social Enterprise Network. And this is this whole co-creation that you all are living. It's one thing to come and just talk about a model or talk about it theoretically. It's another that what we're all seeing and hearing from you is it is alive. And all we need to do is make the choice, the decision to do, to take a step and then another step and another step, and not to be afraid, but to actually know we're never alone. It is illusion that we're separate. So when we really take that to heart, then we know we've got everything we need to move forward, right? And you all inspire that in me over and over again. So I want to turn it to all of you. We're 6 minutes past the hour, and we have a 19-minute film to show. Could one of you offer that? And then we'll be here at the end of that with just like a whoever wants to talk about the next, to close this and then let people know about the next sessions.
Okay, so I'm just going to go put the video on.
Yes.
Now, with regards to the new case, the missing case, so what they did was they've sent all the documents, home investigation report, everything has been sent to us, but then they have not filed a report yet.
The northeast of the country voted last week, and that's where Dayline reporter Amos Roberts found young children slaving away in appalling rat hole coal mines.
Everyone is turning a blind eye. Human rights campaigner Hasina Kharbhih is sounding the alarm. She says 70,000 children work in the industry here.
ताल से मारेगा क्या क्या होगा पत्थर गिरेगा उधर से ऊपर से
डेंजर ही हो सकता है एक जगह में गिर जाएगा ना क्या
You have to present the names of the 70,000 children. If you cannot do it in the next 15 days, then your organization is going to be shut down.
I'm Hasina Kharbhih. I live in this 80 years old house with my 90 years old mom. I still go back to how I grew up in this house as a young child. I'm the youngest sibling. I mean, in my tribe, in the Khasi tribe, we are calling the Khaddu, who's the caretaker of the family. I think after starting, Impulse, and then deciding to apply for a scholarship in the UK, it was something I imagine at that point of time to to have great studies, good studies in the UK, and the fact that the ban on timber, you should remember that the ban on timber, a lot of people lost their livelihood. And that was the time, the peak of the time when I got my scholarship to Cardiff. I don't know, I felt that the trust, that the women had on me, and going to Cardiff, to the UK for, a few years for my undergrads and graduations and postgrad, by the time I come back, they would lose that trust in me. I think it's got so much to do with the trust that they have in me. I felt I would betray them not coming back. I think that's one of the major reasons. I never thought of myself at the age of 17 to start Impulse NGO Network, to embark on a journey where it's never normally traveled by anyone else. But I stand back to believe that no human being should be enslaved. And I'm glad I took this journey, which is less travel. The journey which is less travel helped me to find a way and a path.
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, I just wanted to check with regards to the missing case. What is the update for the document? Are we able to get yet?
If you're looking at the way Impulse model function, the 6 R's of the Impulse Case Management Center, repatriation, of course, it was done jointly. Then rehabilitation, they complete the whole process of the rehabilitation. And reintegration, it means most of them got a job now.
Yes.
They are earning and having a livelihood. The dynamics about how employment opportunities and greener pastures are actually enslaving, where they would be offered a job by the recruiting agencies, and the girls would sign these contracts and they would go and accept that job. But at the end, the destination point is the destination point where the passport is being taken away, the identity is being taken away, the contract has no value, and they are stuck in a cycle of exploitation. That is a trend which is growing every day.
Remember the case of Putli?
Yeah, some kids. My God, I still cannot believe that, when the mother and the daughter met and they cried, and I was like, got tears too, because, that is something which you can't even imagine, that after so many years of, being separated from each other, they met.
When I look back 30 years ago, I embarked in this journey as I was very uncomfortable with the situation of what happened in my state of Meghalaya and the northeast of India,
where just children are being worked in these rat hole mines, where the life is at risk 24/7.
Children like Sharon, who today is doing his graduation after he's rescued from the mine. I think another courageous young boy who stood by me in the campaign. I cannot imagine not getting them life of freedom, because life of freedom is a right that each one of us has. And I still remember when I was asked to stop to intervene on the coal mining. I think I look back, again there I was offered money. I was offered not to take the public interest litigation to the next level, to ensure that slavery of bonded labor of children in those rat hole mining continue, if I would have taken the money.
In India, child labor has been illegal for more than 60 years. It all started with phone call, different people calling me up, calling at the office. The first thing they would say that, don't take up what you're doing. Don't intervene in what you're trying to do. Stay away from it. And they are called and said that you're such a small organization, you'll be shut down very easily. There were times that, it came to personal threat, think about, your family who are there.
I decided to take on the public interest litigation to get the mining closed. But the price I have to pay to be attacked at different level. But the day when my car that I was traveling was hit by a coal truck, that was the day when my driver died on the spot, and I escaped, and here I am. I mean, I look back that the powerful still play an important role in this world because they feel that they can buy, they can purchase.
बैठेगा जब ये ट्रेन रुकेगा क्या करेगा
हम घर जाएगा
कहाँ में
नेपाल जाएगा
नेपाल जाएगा
The Impulse Social Enterprise was born because of that process of how we felt the importance of building livelihood of women in the rural area, and that's a long-term solution. And I don't think any human trafficking organization in this world can tackle without giving economic choices to women. If I look back, one of the most powerful survivors of human trafficking, Ella Sangma, who embarked a different journey with me altogether, who showed the power of courage. When we were there together at the Hazari Court in New Delhi, when she had to give a statement as the only survivor for the 400 girls who have been rescued from GB Road, who have already been repatriated back to Nepal and Bangladesh, she had the courage not to be scared, the courage not to accept the money that was being given by the traffickers.
मैं एला संगमा, मैं जब छोटा था तो मुझे ट्रैफिक हुआ था क्योंकि इसलिए ट्रैफिक हुआ था क्योंकि मेरा पास कोई काम नहीं था, हमारा गांव में कोई ऐसा काम नहीं था और कोई हेल्प मदद करने वाला नहीं था। उसी की वजह से हम लोग का वहाँ पे गांव में मतलब ट्रैफिक हुआ है वहाँ से, और हम दिल्ली में गया ट्रैफिक होने के बाद, वहाँ पे लेके जाने के बाद मुझे बहुत दिन तक वहाँ पे रखा था। उसके बाद रखने के बाद फिर वहाँ से हमको फिर NGO में लाया गया।
She made me realize that if employment opportunity is available at the rural level, she would have never migrated. Her mother would have never sent her to work in GB Road. She would have never been exploited. And I think today, when we're looking at not just livelihood for women and choices, which is choices that is going to be very, very critical and very important to them. But I think the next level that we're going now is impulse model prevention and rural futures co-creation is another dimension of the larger picture.
Balipara Foundation, the organization that Saurav Malhotra was representing, of course, was known to Impulse NGO Network for a very long time. And we have been in dialogue and discussions, and we respond and respect each other's work. But Saurav has an innovation that he introduced within the Balipara Foundation called Rural Futures.
Because we have to save the environment, because I mean, in a place like this whole Eastern Himalayan zone, Hasina, where about 80% of the people are rural, and therefore their livelihoods depend on land, whether it is agriculture or the forest. If you start losing the forests, you don't have agriculture anymore because your soil does not have nutrients. Those people are so disconnected and remote, right? I mean, they have to take this boat every day to go to school. They have to take this boat every time there is a medical emergency. So it is really important to make the place self-sufficient for food and self-sufficient in terms of the economic livelihoods, and to try and create a local economy wherever there is. I'm super excited to meet Ella here. Yes, they did, yeah. They did. Yeah, the workshop, yeah.
Ella has been like completely into it. Hi, Ella.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Biman. Hi, Ella. How are you? Uncle, bhale ase? Biman, bhale ase? Thanks, thanks.
हेलो दीदी, कैसे हैं आप?
ठीक
ठीक
है।
है, ठीक है।
कैसा चल रहा है?
भाई नमस्कार।
तो सोशल एंटरप्राइज काम कर रहा है। हम जो गांव में आके देखता है तो हमें अच्छा लगता है, क्योंकि सबका जिंदगी इतना अच्छा हो रहा है और कोई किसी का लड़की बाहर जाता नहीं।
পৰিস্থিতিত খেতি কৰি আছিলো। আমি যেতিয়া বহুত ইনকাম পালো, অমিতা, বেঙেনা, জলকীয়া, আলু লগাই ভাল লাগিলেও তেনেকুৱাও আমি ইনকাম পালো। তাৰপিছত আকৌ এতিয়া বেলেগকে নতুন কাপোৰ বনোৱা ডিজাইন আহিব। এইটো যদি আহে আমাৰ বেছি ইনকাম হ'ব আৰু ভালো লাগিব নতুনকে এতিয়া আহিব বুলি। নমস্কাৰ।
And ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Hasina Kharbhih, who's the brand ambassador of Impulse Empower since the inception of Impulse Social Enterprises.
She was just a young girl of 14, and when she told me, what should I say in the code, I still look back, I said, you have to say what is right. And you're the only voice for the 400 young girls who have been rescued from the GB road. And I was not allowed to be in the court. And these people were all waiting outside the court at that moment.
हम तो डरता नहीं था, हम तो डरना ही छोड़ दिया, हम डरता ही नहीं है ऐसे भी। हम नहीं डरता है, डरने का नाम नहीं है मेरा।
It's strange, the judiciary telling her, like, you know, you should have thought twice. Would you like to change your statement? I mean, that's quite a strange.
सोच लो दोबारा, हम नहीं सोचना, क्योंकि हम तो सच बोला है, जो भी बोला है हम तो सच बोला है।
Now Ella came out of the court, ran and made me run out of the court. That moment of running from the court to save our life from the most powerful traffickers who had all the money, who offered all the money to both of us, to withdraw the case and not to give the statement. But today, I think the courage that Ella showed of getting this man life imprisonment is a courage that I carry with me constantly, and continued the journey that we need to look at long-term solution of preventing unsafe migration and vulnerable communities who have choices of possibilities. Life is hard and it's full of thorns. It has its ups and downs. I believe every cloud has a silver lining. Hardship makes life whole and beautiful and worthwhile. I think Impulse Social Enterprise is a way forward, prevention of human trafficking through livelihood, because unless until we do that, we cannot end slavery. And I think Ella was right that, you know, if she had a choice at that point of time, she would not have been exploited.
The co-creation of Impulse Model and Rural Futures intends to tackle migration from the environmental lens, anticipating reduction of unsafe migration by enabling livelihoods connected to growth and restoration.
We have to battle policy, we have to battle government agreements, but I think what we need to be able to create is an innovation that actually works across boundaries, right? And the co-creation innovation that we're talking about is one that I think works anywhere where there's people and land and forests.
When we started, there was nobody working on the issue of human trafficking. We were the first organization working on this issue in the Northeast. We have been one step ahead of traffickers, so that's why we were able to solve cases.
Ella, you are that star. That star. And now I think together we have to ensure that everybody else gets there too.
Noble and virtuous lady
deserves to be saluted for her successful rescue and rehabilitation of over 72,000 women and children held as sex slaves and victims of child labor exploitation in Northeast India and the neighboring regions. Please put your hands together as we welcome on stage Miss Hasina Kharbhih. In 30 years of my experiences, the journey of working in ending slavery has embarked the understanding that human beings continue to be enslaved by the powerful people, by the rich, by businesses, because it's a 30 billion industry. Trafficking is a 30 billion industry, so it's just something that will continue to happen.
Everyone just take a deep breath, maybe a couple. It's a powerful film, powerful story of people's lives. And it gives such hope and inspiration when we each listen to what we're called to be and to do in the world and know that we never do anything alone. So I'd like to give to each of you, Hasina and Saurav, the last couple minutes that we have, if there's any other message that you would like to give to those who are listening. And let's start with you. Well, either one. I don't even know who to choose because I know it doesn't matter. Go ahead, Saurav. What message do you have? And then we'll close with Hasina.
I think also, I just want to answer one of the questions, Anita, that I've been saying. So I think there was a question on about, people are not moving to a higher ground when there's floods to prevent from being flooded out. So, I mean, I wish things were as easy, and I wish you could pick and choose the land that you lived on. Unfortunately, you cannot. I mean, if you belong to a certain indigenous community, you only have a certain amount of land that is allotted to you. You cannot move from your land to other land unless you have the money to buy it, and you cannot move from your land to the lands that are inhabited by other indigenous communities. So the easiest option, unfortunately, then is to migrate. Yeah. And I think that being said, Anita, and apart from the fact that we would really like to thank you and to thank everybody else, I think just a big urge to everyone out there is to start thinking as to why things cannot work, and to believe in the fact that things can always work, and why not. I think the reason why I met Hasina was a why not, with a big question mark. Why not? There's no reason to not do it, right? So I think that we have to start to think differently and act differently and consume differently, and make sure that we drive global politics in a way that things are better for forests and for people, because that is really all that we have on Earth. Yeah.
Thank you, Saurav. And Hasina, some final words.
So I would say that gender harmony can make things possible, and co-creation is a replication. And I think the world sometimes can see that we don't have to duplicate action. We can actually support workable solution and provide and anchor those possible solutions to other parts of the world, because human trafficking is a global problem. And forest deforestation is a global problem. Climate change is a global problem. So if a solution has been tested on the ground, then scaling out of that solution, while we scale deep in any of the countries of interest, where we have similarities of situation, is a possibility. And that would be an action that each one of us who's listening to us today, who hearing what we're saying, who watch the film, can come together in many ways to replicate. I think both of us are too happy to get this innovation to any parts of the world and handhold that we can make gender equity possible. Let's bring that harmony while we actually prevent deforestation and support the work of climate change, and also looking at the value of an end-to-end value chain. There will be many Rekha Dole, Ranjit Dole in many parts of the world. There'll be many Pavitra in many parts of the world. So that will be my thoughts. And I think the belief, I think like the film said, thanks to Miguel. I mean, he works in the World Bank, but decided to make this film because that's his passion. He writes. And I think he captured belief. And I think both of us believe that the co-creation is possible. And I'm sure that others can actually replicate. Thank you so much, Anita, the World Unity Week, for allowing us to share our story to everyone. And I know 1 hour sometimes can be very short, but Anita, thank you. I would say the mentorship. And Jeffrey Brown, who's not here today, but who connected both of us, who you put this process together. And here we are talking to the world. And I'm sure that the others, as they listen, can get connected to us. We have sent a link. Yes. and can communicate more.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
And Priya there, for putting things and I think answering most of the chat. And whoever has put all this chat, Nancy, beautiful questions, beautiful, I think you just let your heart out to us. But I'm sure that we should connect, and we should really connect and discuss beyond this forum that we've talked today. And we would love to see how a solution and your passion can actually be combined.
And again, with that, we are out of time. I know there are more questions, but what I want to just say again is just reiterate a big, huge thank you to you, Saurav Malhotra and Hasina Kharbhih. Both of you and your work and your communities, our hearts are with you, and hopefully our feet and we'll get into action, even more action than the people here already are doing. And just a big thanks to World Unity Week. And please, all of you who have been here, we appreciate your presence and spreading the word. And we have several more days. Lots is unfolding at World Unity Week. And just thanks to everyone for being here. With that, we're closing the gender harmony from regenerating forests to ending human trafficking. Thank you all, and have a wonderful morning, evening, whatever time it is that you are. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.